The dining room had gone silent. Emily Carter stood frozen by the table, her hands shaking, a stained napkin clutched in her fingers. Around her, well-dressed executives whispered behind their glasses of wine. She could hear pieces of what they were saying. She's going to get fired tonight. Poor girl doesn't even know who she's serving. Richard Collins stood near the kitchen door, arms crossed, a small smile creeping onto his face. He looked like a man watching his plan finally come together. But here is what nobody in that room understood. The man sitting at the head of the table, the richest guest the hotel had ever hosted, could not hear one word of the cruelty surrounding him. He was deaf. He could not hear the whispers. He could not hear Richard's quiet lies to the kitchen staff. But he could see everything. Every glance. Every smirk. Every tear Emily was fighting to hold back. This is the story of Emily Carter, a waitress with nothing but her honesty left to lose. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do, by someone who held power over your life? Stay with me, because by the end of this night, one person in that room would lose everything they had built. And it would not be her. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me which city you're watching from tonight. I love seeing how far the story travels. And if you've ever worked for a manager like Richard, someone who made your life harder just because they could, drop a fire in the comments right now. Trust me, you are not the only one who has been there. Now, let's go back to where it all started, 5 years earlier, in a small apartment in Chicago. 5 years ago, Emily Carter's world fell apart on a rainy Tuesday morning. Her parents were on their way to her college orientation when the bus they were riding skidded off a wet highway. Emily was 18. In one single phone call, she lost both the people who raised her, who believed in her, who told her that hard work and honesty always paid off in the end. There was no inheritance. No family safety net. Just Emily, a small apartment in a struggling part of Chicago, and a choice. She could give up, or she could keep going. She chose to keep going. By day, Emily attended community college on a scholarship, studying business administration, one class at a time. She sat in the back row, always tired, always taking notes with hands that smelled like dish soap from the night before. By night, she worked long shifts as a waitress at the Grand Meridian, one of Chicago's most luxurious 5-star hotels. Her apartment was small. The heater barely worked in winter. But it was hers, and she kept it clean, and she never once complained. Emily believed in something simple. She believed that honesty mattered, even when no one was watching. She believed that kindness was not a weakness. Her mother used to say, "Emily, the world will test your character when it thinks no one is looking. That is when it matters most." She carried those words like armor. But not everyone at the Grand Meridian valued what Emily valued. Her manager, Richard Collins, made her life difficult in ways both small and cruel. Richard came from money. He wore expensive watches and spoke about people like her as if poverty were a personal failure rather than bad luck. He believed, deep down, that people who came from nothing would always amount to nothing. Richard gave Emily the worst shifts. Holidays. Overnight closings. Double sections that left her running for 8 hours straight. When the hotel was short-staffed, he forgot to log her overtime, so she worked unpaid hours she desperately needed. And whenever a wealthy guest complained about anything, even something that was not her fault, Richard's first move was always the same. "Emily, what did you do this time?" She never argued. She never made excuses. She simply apologized, fixed what she could, and kept working. Her coworkers admired her for it. Richard mistook her patience for weakness. Emily was not naive. She knew Richard disliked her. What she didn't know yet was how far his dislike would take him. 3 weeks before that rainy night, the entire hotel staff received an urgent memo. The Grand Meridian would be hosting Kang Min-jae, one of Asia's richest businessmen, and the deaf CEO of South Korea's largest technology empire. Min-jae had been deaf since childhood, the result of a severe illness at age 6. Rather than let it limit him, he turned it into fuel. With the unwavering support of his older sister, Sua, who managed his public communications and stood beside him from the very beginning, Min-jae built a technology company from nothing into a billion-dollar empire admired across the world. He communicated through Korean Sign Language, careful lip reading, and a translation tablet that converted speech to text in real time. Those who worked closely with him respected him deeply, not just for his brilliance, but for something rarer in the business world, his integrity. Min-jae was known for walking away from deals the moment he sensed dishonesty. Money never impressed him. Character did. Richard had been chasing a partnership with Min-jae's company for nearly 8 months. Every proposal, every meeting, every carefully rehearsed pitch had ended the same way. Rejected. What Richard didn't understand or refused to admit was why. Min-jae's team had quietly done their research. They knew about Richard's reputation for cutting corners, mistreating staff, and taking credit for other people's work. To Min-jae, a man who could not be trusted in small things could not be trusted with anything larger. He had rejected far bigger offers than Richard's for exactly that reason. This dinner was Richard's last chance, and he knew it. 2 days before the visit, Richard called Emily into his office. She expected another lecture. Instead, he smiled, an unfamiliar, unsettling kind of smile. "You're serving the private dinner Thursday night," he said. "Personally. Just you." Emily blinked. "Me? Richard, I don't know anything about corporate dinners like this." "You'll figure it out," he said, still smiling. "Consider it an opportunity." Something about the way he said it made her stomach tighten. She didn't know why yet. But she had learned, over 5 hard years, to trust that feeling. Thursday night arrived with cold rain tapping against the hotel windows. Emily stood in the private dining room, her uniform pressed, her notepad ready. She had spent the entire day preparing. She read about basic dining etiquette. She practiced carrying trays without a single wobble. She wanted, more than anything, to prove that Richard's trust in her was not a mistake. She didn't know it was never trust at all. At exactly 7 o'clock, Kang Min-jae arrived with 2 members of his team and his translation tablet resting beside his plate. He was calm, composed, dressed simply for a man of his wealth. Emily greeted him with a small, respectful bow, unsure if it was the right gesture, but wanting to show respect any way she could. The trouble began within the first 10 minutes. Table 4 ordered the seared salmon, Emily told the kitchen, reading from her notepad. But when the plate arrived, it was the wrong dish entirely, an overly spiced dish Min-jae's team had specifically asked to avoid. Emily's stomach dropped. She apologized quickly and rushed the plate back. What she didn't know was that Richard had gone into the kitchen minutes earlier and quietly changed the order himself, then told the kitchen staff, "Emily gets confused sometimes. Just follow whatever I tell you tonight." The wine came next. Emily had double-checked the label before pouring, certain it matched the order. But the bottle had been switched in the back, an inexpensive wine poured into the label of an expensive one, arranged by Richard while Emily was busy handling the food mix-up. One of Min-jae's associates tasted it, frowned, and murmured something to another executive. Emily saw the exchange, but didn't understand what had gone wrong. She just knew, somehow, everything felt wrong. Then the real food began arriving late. Course after course was delayed, 10 minutes, then 20. The kitchen mysteriously backed up only for this specific table. Emily ran back and forth, apologizing, trying to explain, trying to fix problems she didn't even realize she hadn't caused. Across the room, executives at nearby tables began to whisper. Is this incompetence, or does the hotel just not care about important guests? That poor girl is completely lost. Someone should replace her before this gets worse. Emily heard fragments of it all. Her face burned with humiliation. Her hands trembled as she carried the next tray. She kept glancing toward the kitchen door, silently pleading for help that never came. And there, near the entrance, stood Richard, arms folded, watching. A quiet, satisfied stillness on his face, the look of a man watching his plan unfold exactly as designed. Emily had no idea he was the one pulling every string. The final course arrived, and everything collapsed at once. As Emily reached to set down the dessert plate, her tray tilted, just slightly, but enough. The plate slid, crashed onto the marble floor, and shattered into a dozen pieces. The sound cracked through the silent room like a gunshot. Every head turned. A server nearby, rushing to help, accidentally knocked over a full glass of wine, splashing dark red liquid across the white tablecloth, dangerously close to Min-jae's sleeve. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the whispers turned into open judgment. That's it. She's finished. She'll be fired before dessert is even served. I've never seen anything this unprofessional. Emily dropped to her knees, gathering broken porcelain with shaking hands, fighting back tears she refused to let fall in front of a room full of strangers. Everything she had worked for, the scholarship, the late nights, the quiet promise she made to her parents' memory, felt like it was crumbling on this marble floor along with the shattered plate. She thought of her empty apartment, her unpaid bills, the job that was, quite possibly, the only thing standing between her and losing everything. And then, through her blurred eyes, she looked up at Kang Min-jae, waiting for the anger, the disappointment, the disgust she had seen on every other face in that room. But his expression held none of that. He hadn't flinched at the crash. He hadn't reacted to the gasps, the whispers, the chaos around him. Slowly, it hit her. He couldn't hear any of it. Not the crash. Not the whispers. Not a single cruel word spoken about her all night. And in that instant, Emily realized something far more shocking. In 3 hours of serving this man, not one single person in that entire room, not the executives, not the hotel staff, not even Richard, had made any real effort to actually communicate with him as a person. Quick pause. If you think Emily deserves better than this night, hit that like button right now. And before we continue, drop a comment and guess, what do you think she does next? Does she break down? Walk away? Or does she surprise everyone in that room? Keep reading, because what happens next is the moment everything changes. Something in Emily's mind shifted. Years ago, before the accident, before the hotel, before any of this, she had spent her Saturday afternoons volunteering at a small community center near her old neighborhood. She worked with a group of deaf children, teaching them art, playing games, laughing with them in a language made entirely of hands. She learned basic sign language back then, not because she had to, but because she wanted every child in that room to feel seen. She never imagined she would need it again like this. Emily set down the broken porcelain, wiped her hands, and did something no one in that room expected. She moved closer to Min-jae, careful to stay within his direct line of sight, and slowly, deliberately, began to sign. "I'm sorry," her hand said. "Something isn't right tonight. Please give me a moment to fix it." The entire dining room froze. Executives stopped mid-whisper. Servers stopped moving. Even Richard, standing near the kitchen door, felt his confident smile falter for the first time all evening. Min-jae's eyes widened slightly. Surprise flickered across his face, genuine, unguarded surprise. In years of business dinners, negotiations, and high-profile events, not one employee, not one executive, not one waiter had ever bothered to learn even a simple sentence in his language. His interpreter leaned forward, ready to translate as usual. Min-jae raised a hand, quietly waving him off. He wanted to respond himself. Slowly, he signed back. His movements were smooth, practiced, patient with her imperfect grammar. "You know sign language?" Emily nodded, her hands shaking slightly as she continued. "Only a little. I learned from children." Something shifted in Min-jae's expression. Not pity. Respect. For the first time all evening, sincerity had cut through the noise. Emily didn't wait for permission to continue. She stood, straightened her uniform, and walked directly toward the kitchen door. Richard stepped forward to intercept her, that same fake smile returning to his face. "Emily, I'll handle this. Let me step in and—" "No," Emily said, her voice steady despite everything. "I caused this confusion. I'm going to fix it myself." She pushed past him before he could argue further. Inside the kitchen, she discovered the truth of the mismatched orders, the mislabeled wine, the mysteriously delayed courses, but she didn't waste time asking who was responsible. She simply took control. She personally rechecked every dish against the original order. She corrected the wine herself, opening a new bottle and confirming the label matched exactly what had been requested. She stood beside the chef, calmly directing each plate as it left the kitchen, refusing to let a single mistake reach the table again. When one of the junior staff members quietly whispered, "You know this isn't your fault, right?" Richard set this whole thing up. Emily paused for only a moment. "Maybe," she said. "But right now, fixing it is what matters." She never once spoke Richard's name aloud to blame him. Not to the kitchen staff. Not to the guests. Not even when the hotel's assistant manager asked her directly what had happened. She simply said, "There was some confusion. I'm correcting it now." Course by course, she rebuilt the dinner from the wreckage. And slowly, painstakingly, the room began to settle. By the time dessert was finally served, correctly this time, the dining room had settled into an uneasy quiet. Every eye kept drifting toward Emily as she moved between tables, calm and focused, as though the disaster an hour earlier had never happened. When the final course was cleared, Kang Min-jae rose from his seat. The room fell silent instantly. Every executive, every hotel staff member, every server turned to face him. His interpreter stepped forward, ready to translate his words for the room. Min-jae signed slowly, deliberately, his eyes moving across the crowd before settling on Richard near the back of the room. The interpreter spoke his words aloud. "Business is built on trust," Min-jae signed, "not expensive suits." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Richard's smile, the one he had worn all evening like a badge of victory, began to fade. Min-jae continued, his hands steady and sure. "Tonight, many things went wrong at this table. Food, wine, timing. I do not know exactly why, but I know this. One person in this room fixed every mistake without excuses, without blaming anyone else, and without knowing I was watching closely." He turned and pointed directly at Emily. "She is the only honest person I have met tonight." Gasps spread through the room. Richard's face drained of color. The confident smile that had carried him through the entire evening was completely gone, replaced by something close to panic. "There must be some misunderstanding," Richard said quickly, stepping forward. "I can explain everything, Mr. Kong. Min-jae simply looked at him, unmoved, and signed something short. The interpreter translated flatly. "There is nothing to discuss tonight." Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in his career, he had no clever excuse ready. The next morning, hotel management pulled the security footage from the kitchen and dining area, standard procedure after any high-profile incident. What they found left no room for doubt. The footage clearly showed Richard entering the kitchen before service, switching the order cards himself. It showed him quietly instructing the kitchen staff to follow his changes instead of Emily's original orders. It showed him swapping the wine bottles by hand. Every single mistake from the night before had Richard's fingerprints on it, literally and completely. Hotel ownership was furious. Not only had Richard sabotaged an employee, he had nearly destroyed a partnership worth millions, all to manufacture a rescue that never happened. Richard was fired that same morning, escorted out of the building he once ruled over like a king. Word spread fast through Chicago's hospitality industry. Within weeks, no five-star hotel in the city would even consider hiring him. His name became a quiet warning passed between managers. Don't be another Richard Collins. Before Kang Min-jae left Chicago, he requested one more meeting, this time with Emily alone, along with his interpreter and his sister Sua, who had flown in that morning. Emily arrived nervous, still unsure why the world's most private billionaire wanted to speak with her directly. Min-jae didn't waste time with formalities. "I run a foundation," he signed, Sua translating warmly beside him. "It focuses on accessibility for people with disabilities around the world. I need someone I can trust as my executive assistant on this project. Someone honest. Someone who does not quit when things become difficult." Emily blinked, certain she had misunderstood. "Me? I don't have any corporate experience. I'm still in community college." Sua smiled gently. "My brother has met hundreds of executives with impressive resumes. Very few of them have real character. He believes character matters more." Emily thought of her parents, of the words her mother once told her. The world tests you when it thinks no one is watching. She had been tested, and she had not backed down. She accepted. Over the next 3 years, Emily's life transformed in ways she never imagined. She traveled with the foundation to Seoul, Tokyo, London, and Nairobi, helping design accessibility programs for schools, workplaces, and public spaces. Minjae's company sponsored the completion of her degree, and she graduated with honors while working full-time for the foundation. Her hard work did not go unnoticed. By her 3rd year, Emily became one of the youngest directors in the foundation's history, overseeing programs that reached thousands of people living with disabilities across 3 continents. Throughout it all, she and Minjae worked closely, side by side, through long meetings, late nights, and countless small moments of quiet understanding. What began as mutual respect slowly, patiently, grew into something neither of them expected. Unlike the fairy tales people love to imagine, their bond wasn't built on wealth or grand gestures. It was built on trust, patience, and shared values, the same qualities Emily had shown that very first rainy night. 1 year later, Seoul glowed under bright lights for the grand opening of the world's largest inclusive technology center, a project Emily had helped build from the ground up. Thousands of guests filled the plaza. Millions more watched the live stream around the world. Kang Min-jae stepped onto the stage, calm as always, though something in his eyes looked different that night. Nervous, almost. He thanked the crowd through his interpreter, spoke briefly about accessibility, about breaking down barriers, about building a future where no one felt invisible. Then he paused, set down his microphone, and turned toward Emily, who stood near the front of the crowd, unaware of what was coming. He looked directly at her and raised his hands. He signed 6 simple words slowly so everyone could understand, even those watching a translation on their screens. "Will you spend forever with me?" The plaza fell completely silent. Emily's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face before she could stop them. 5 years earlier, she had been an invisible waitress, blamed for things she didn't do, working herself exhausted just to survive. Now, in front of thousands, the man who once called her the only honest person in a room full of strangers was asking her to stay by his side forever. Through tears, she raised trembling hands and signed back. "Yes, always." The crowd erupted into applause that echoed across the plaza. The waitress once treated as invisible had become the partner of one of Korea's most admired CEOs. Not because of luck, not because of a fairy tale, but because, on a night when everything fell apart, she chose honesty when everyone else chose deception. Sometimes, the people the world underestimates are carrying the greatest strength of all. Kindness and integrity can open doors that money and manipulation never will. Thank you so much for watching Emily's story until the very end. Her journey reminds us that character speaks louder than circumstance, and that honesty always finds its way to light, even in the darkest moments. Tell me in the comments, what part of this story touched you the most? Was it the moment she signed her apology? The moment Richard's plan fell apart? Or the proposal in Seoul? If this story moved you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And if you're new here, subscribe, because more powerful stories like this one are coming. Remember, kindness is never wasted. Someone somewhere is always watching.